إننا نرى للخبث دار سنهد عرشكم وسنفني ملككم فارحلوا دوما فإنا نرى للخبث دار يجيب الرداد ويعلو حدائي وأرمل.
You're listening to Your World Today, where you won't miss a thing.
وصوتي ينادي لمن قد تسام لجنح الفضاء.
This afternoon, we speak about the different neighborhoods that were destroyed in Gaza. We're joined by our guest, Sami Amin Al-Arin, who is a Kuwaiti-born political activist of Palestinian origin, who was a computer engineering professor at the University of South Florida. Sami, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
We'd like you to share with us some insight on the different neighborhoods that are in Gaza. So let us begin with right in the north of Gaza. Perhaps before getting to the specific neighborhoods, perhaps you could just outline to us, give us an overview of, how Gaza is set up in terms of the different neighborhoods, and what is it like if you have to describe to someone who hasn't been there.
Well, I didn't live in Gaza to give you any specifics, but it's well known that Gaza is a small strip of land, about 365 kilometers square. It's about roughly 1.5% of historical Palestine on the southern part, coastal part on the Mediterranean. It has about a width of 12 to 14 kilometers and about a length of less than 35 kilometers. It's an open air prison, as everybody knows, because it's been under siege now for 16 continuous years. Before that, it was under occupation, military occupation from 1967, direct military occupation from 1967 until the army withdrew in 2005. But since then, it's been also controlled. Everything in Gaza was controlled by the Israeli army, still controlled by Israeli authorities. It is the most densely populated place on earth, about 2.3 million people, half of which are children. And then when you add women and add elderly, we're talking about roughly 2/3 to 70% of the population. This is what the Palestinians have been suffering since the beginning of this onslaught on them. Over 70% of the casualties are children. And when I talk about children, I'm talking about infants, young people. We have over 2,000 Palestinian children who have been killed by the Israeli bombardment since October the 7th. Over 1,000 women, hundreds of elderly people. So far, we've suffered, I think, close to 6,000, coming closer to 6,000 martyrs. And you could also add another, perhaps 1,500 or 1,700, depending on daily addition to this, who have been lost. We don't know what happened to them, most likely under the rubbles. So, and this is continuing. There is no end in sight. The Israeli brutality is unmatched in modern history. When you look at the rate by which people are being killed, the world was outraged for the so-called Russian atrocities against the Ukrainians, where what you had were combatants for the most part. Civilians were spared for the most part. The horrific onslaught of wars. But here you have a daily dose of killing hundreds and hundreds of civilians. We're talking about young people, children. Not only that, but on top of that, you have about 1.4 million Palestinians who have been displaced. You have over 180,000 residences that have been level bombarded, 20,000, I think about closer to 25,000 of which have totally been leveled. The amount of brutality and destruction and mayhem that has reigned on the Palestinians for the past 2 weeks, as I said, is really unparalleled when you compare it to the previous wars. And all that is taking place because the Israeli army, for the first time in its history, has received one of the most defeats, not only in front of, not just in front of armies, but in front of fighters who have been preparing for this. These are regular fighters who are fed up with the Israeli occupation and the Israeli arrogance and hegemony and control of their lives. There are at least five reasons why this has happened on October the 7th. First of all, with the empowerment of the current Israeli right-wing fascist government, there has been an increased daily incursions and daily storms of Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, and particularly in the past 3 months prior to the October 7th attacks. They were storming the Aqsa Mosque, promising that they will impose what they call a place and time division, in which the Aqsa Mosque would no longer be under the sovereignty or the control of the Awqaf of the Muslim people there, but they want to take part of it and try to desecrate it. So there were daily insults and daily imposition of these kind of incursions that were taking place, even though they were warned several times, including 2 years ago in 2021. But they increased these kind of incursions. They increased that kind of coming to Al-Aqsa Mosque and try to impose this new reality on the ground. And secondly, also the Israeli army has intensified its invasions of Palestinian cities, Palestinian towns, refugee camps, particularly in the West Bank. Over 250 people prior to, again, the attacks on October the 7th were killed, including 40 children. These were almost daily, routinely incursions taking place, events taking place, and even some of them died in prison. The prison system itself, which now is put under the supervision of the right-wing fascist Ben Gvir, he changed the rules. He prevented people from meeting with their families. We have 5,500 prisoners in these prisons. Their life is becoming increasingly miserable, untenable. So that's the third reason also, other than the incursions in Al-Aqsa, was to find a solution for these prisoners. Hamas has like 2-3 prisoners prior to this, and they were trying to negotiate a settlement. The government completely refused to negotiate. So part of this also was to bring some prisoners so that they can force an exchange. And the fourth reason is the suffocating siege on Gaza. Gaza has been under a suffocating blockade and siege by the Israeli government for the past 16 years. I mean, this is one of the longest blockades and sieges in history, where everything is controlled. They control how much food get in or get out, how much electricity, how much fuel, whatever the Palestinians need, everything has been under the control of the Israelis. And also the whole world is watching, doing absolutely nothing to bring relief to Gaza. Actually, they want to use it for more political concessions and without any regard to Palestinian life, Palestinian right to live in decently in their own country. And then lastly, the last reason, the fifth reason for what happened is because the world, or Israel, was trying to convince the world that the Palestinian cause is no longer an issue. It's a side issue. They can just bypass it. They can go and have normalization with the regional countries. They've had it with the Emiratis, with the Bahrainis, with the Moroccans, and Sudanese, and they thought, okay, we can do it even with the largest prize, which is Saudi Arabia, and then there is no need actually to do anything for Palestinians. So this operation came to remind people that they cannot bypass the Palestinians, that the Palestinians are part and parcel of this, and that they will not give up resistance or give up their rights.
Certainly, you've given us an overview and educated us, and that is what is required: continuous education and awareness. May Allah make it easy for one and all. We appreciate your time. Barakallah feekum. And we continue making dua from South Africa, and also continue mobilizing our government and mobilizing civil society.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So,
It was our guest chatting to us about the latest in Gaza and giving us some